Hello, my name's Leslie Whitty. I'm the Vice President of Outreach and Communications for the South Central Workforce Development Board. And joining me, we have our President, CEO, John Swartz. And this is our Open Jobs Report analysis and review. And just so you know, we changed up the format a little bit last month, and we're doing that again. Hopefully, this will provide further insight and give you a lot of unique bits of information. So, John, I will turn it over to you. We get to our first slide there.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. So yeah, it's a pleasure to do this again. We're really proud of this report and the evolution of this report. As the title of the presentation alludes to, I mean, we're going to focus in on open jobs in the region. But part of the shift this month, and I think going forward, is we've been talking about open jobs and kind of really peeling back what those open jobs look like, and we're going to continue to do that. But now, I guess the big change for us is we're going to try to do a better job of marrying up what the labor pool side of things look like, and kind of here are the jobs, here's the labor pool, and what does that delta look like? And so that's kind of what we're going to drill down to today as we go through this. So on this first slide, the thing to point out here is that the South Central Workforce Development Board covers a 10-county region. And when we pull our jobs data out of Jobs EQ, which is the platform that informs what we're doing, we find that in this 10-county region, we have 125,150 jobs. That's jobs that are filled, but also a portion of those jobs are unfilled. And we'll talk about that on the next slide.
Okay.
All right, so when we ran a query in the month of February, in this case, a 30-day query covering the period of February 2nd to March 3rd, what we found there is that there were 6,989 jobs. So almost 7,000 advertised jobs in the region. As we've talked about in previous reports, this is kind of the best, looking at how many advertised jobs there are is kind of the best way to get a feel for how many open jobs you have in the region. Advertised jobs does not necessarily equal open jobs. And that's because, some of these advertised jobs, what we can't know, what we'll never know is does one job posting represent, 5 job vacancies for an employer? And they're just, they're only paying for one advertisement, but they need to fill 5 positions. We don't know. That's not always indicated. But we do know when we break this number down that there's a certain percentage of these jobs that there actually aren't in our region, or are part-time, or are, or something else. And so we'll get into that breakdown here shortly. But I think, when it's fairly accurate to say that we've got approximately 7,000, those 7,000 advertised jobs is probably pretty close to the number of open jobs we have in the region. It's not perfect data,
and I think
it's close enough.
I think we've said in the past, so Jobs EQ pulls from Monster, Indeed, social media, any type of advertising source.
Yes.
For jobs. So, and I just in case someone's watching this for the first time, that's what. And they may even, I would guess, they pull from newspapers, they pull from all sorts of media.
Well, they try to. I mean, they definitely are pulling from the big job, the big internet-based companies, because they can scrape from those and then they can look at them. All those jobs usually have some kind of identification number associated with them, and then they can go through and run an algorithm that reduces duplicates. So if the same job's running on Indeed and Monster, it'll pare that down to one. So it does a good job of that. But I don't know that it can pull from, local newspapers or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, it doesn't really account for gig economy jobs that well. So, unless Uber is, advertising it, on the internet for needing Uber drivers, if somebody's going in and and just finding Uber on their own and signing up to drive.
Right. So it is not 100% accurate down to the, the very singular job, whatever. But it is a highly respected source. Lots of different boards, lots of different entities connected to workforce use Jobs EQ for their data.
Yeah, industry associations, economic development authorities, workforce boards. I mean, Jobs EQ is one of several platforms that are out there. We tend to use Jobs EQ. There's other, we have Burning Glass. I mean, we could do some of this off of Burning Glass. There's others, but they're all pretty similar in how they function and how they scrape and identify, what the advertised jobs are.
Okay.
Yeah, so like in other, in previous months, what we found very consistently is, regardless of how many advertised jobs there are, we have consistently found that about 15% were outside of the region. In this, 15% in this case would be there's, over 1,000 jobs that are being advertised in zip codes in our region, but the companies aren't here. They have no physical presence here. So there's two ways to look at this. Are they jobs for job seekers? Absolutely. But are those companies actually in our region from a workforce perspective or an economic development perspective or what have you? Well, that company isn't really here. So when the U.S. military advertises in our region and they're looking for recruits, those are jobs for people, but the military is going to take those folks. Those jobs are elsewhere. They're not here. Their jobs aren't physically here. They're just recruiting here. And so we find out about 15% of the time that's what's going on. So you hear the other thing.
And some of those jobs may be remote, where someone could remain living where they are now, but the majority of them seem to be jobs that are requiring a move.
A lot of them. And then, so Jobs EQ does a good job of it doesn't allow like Tennessee jobs to penetrate in, things that are just south of the border, but Beaver Dam and, jobs over just outside of our region in Ohio County, and then over towards Campbellsville, there is some advertising that's coming in from those communities. So we just point out that 15% are outside the region. We don't reduce the number. We don't say they're not real. We just try to say, look, we got 7,000 jobs that are being advertised. About a little over 1,000 of them actually aren't here. We just want people to know that. It depends on what seat you sit in. If you're a job seeker, hey, a job's a job's a job. We're not saying they're not real jobs. We're just trying to delineate whether those jobs exist inside of our 10 counties or don't exist inside of our 10 counties. We've consistently found every month that 27% are part-time. I think that's an interesting data point. That's not that we're not passing judgment on part-time jobs, but we feel like, okay, if there's approximately 7,000 advertised jobs, what does that look like? Well, almost 1,900 of them are part-time. I think that's good to know. That tells us a little something about what these jobs look like. And if you drill down even further, a lot of those part-time jobs are going to be found in retail, hospitality, and food, and in that sector cluster that we tend to look at. There's a surprising number that you can find in manufacturing. That kind of surprised me. I don't know the exact number this month, but in my own mind, I had assumed that every manufacturing job was a full-time job, but there's actually a surprising number that are part-time, and that's interesting. And then lastly, we have found consistently that when we look at average entry-level wages, not entry-level, average wages, that's not entry-level, but average wages, 58% of those advertised jobs have an average wage at or below $15 an hour. So that tells us something about our local wage rates in our 10-county region and what's being advertised. To me, what's very telling there is that there's a lot of entry level that's kind of rolled up in that, and entry level, regardless of sector, right? So, but that makes sense. I mean, if you think of everything as a pyramid, you're going to have the largest number of jobs are going to be entry level, and then you're going to move up from there. But yeah, average wage, 58% of the jobs that are being advertised have an average wage at or below $15 an hour. Just something we like to point out.
And John, you mentioned that you didn't know off the top of your head the number of manufacturing jobs. Just to note, if you're watching this and want the full deep dive analysis for all the different sectors, you would just need to sign up for the webinar of this webcast. And when you do that, you can download all those slides immediately. I think there's 25 slides total, and we will just be showing a portion of those during this webcast. But they are available, so you can get lots and lots of details from that. I just wanted to throw that in while I was thinking of it.
That's a good plug. Yeah, we start off with kind of a high level view, kind of what we're doing here, but then we get into we really break down manufacturing, retail, hospitality, and food, construction, healthcare, social assistance, transportation, distribution, and logistics, and business IT. So we really kind of go sector by sector and really start breaking those numbers down. For example, retail, hospitality, food is almost 22% of our economy. Manufacturing is about 20% of our economy. 1/5 of our economy is manufacturing. So we get into some of that detail, and we provide wage data and who's doing all the advertising and other data points that you may find helpful. Yeah, so this is a bit of a shifting point for us. So this is something new that we're starting to do. So, I've talked kind of about the advertised jobs and what the what the demand signal is in the region. Now I want to talk a little bit about what our labor force looks like. And so the next couple of slides kind of drill down into what that looks like. So, first off, let's start with in our 10-county region, we have a total population of a little over 300,000. That's, from 0 years old, 1 day old to whatever the oldest person in our community is, a little over 300,000. If you could go forward a slide, Leslie. Yeah. But when we take that and we say, okay, how many people are working age? And by working age, we're saying how many people are there that are between the ages of 16 and 64 years old. When we run that query, we find that there's a little over 200,000 people that are working age. Of course, you can work beyond 65, but we're just, for the purposes of this, we're saying, okay, there's almost 201,000 people that are between 16 and 64 that we would consider working age adults.
Okay, so we started with the population of the 10-county region total. Now we're looking at the population of those that are within a certain age range who could be considered of working age.
Yeah, right? You could say this is our labor pool, right? This is our max labor pool right here. Now, and just remember what I started off with. We have about 125,000 filled and unfilled jobs. So in a sense, we got 125,000 filled and unfilled jobs. That's what the demand signal is telling us. We've got a labor pool, an ideal, max labor pool of 200,820.
Okay, so I see some pretty big gaps there. So I'm sure you'll be addressing that. Okay.
Yeah. Now this is the number. This is a number we haven't addressed in previous open jobs reports, but it's a number that's been on my radar for a couple of years now, and it's that I worry about two numbers in this role. The first number is how many job vacancies how many jobs are being advertised every month. What that number, that big number, and it's fluctuated anywhere from 6,000 to 7,500 over the last couple of years. month by month. But this is the other one that bothers me a lot because for the last couple of years, we have in our region, we have been hovering right at this number. We have a labor force participation rate of 59.9%. So basically, the way that's defined is labor force participation. What's counted are those that are working and those that are actively seeking work. And so you can see we slightly over 40% of our working age population are not working or actively seeking work. That's the kind of the other way of looking at this. So I think let's go forward a slide. We're going to do some very rough math on this. If we've got, to the left there, if we've got a working age population of almost 201,000 people out there that could be working, if we multiply that times that labor force participation rate, what we have left is 120,290 people that are actively working or seeking work. The 40% that aren't, that means we have over 80,000 people who are not actively working or seeking work. And so that labor force participation rate, that's very bothersome. Why is that rate so low? The national labor force participation rate is several percentage points higher, but why is it so low? And what does that mean? When we talk about labor force, let's talk about that 80,000 number. There are an infinite number of reasons why somebody might not be in the labor force. There are people that have disabilities. There are people that drop out of the workforce to raise children. There's a multitude of reasons why somebody chooses not to work. Either they can't, or maybe they don't have a choice. They're just not working for very legitimate reasons. But on that same spectrum of that 80,000, there's also a portion that probably could be working. We have to ask ourselves, why is that? Why are people that are otherwise healthy and could be working, why are they not working? What's behind that? Are there incentives in place? Are they de-incentivized to work? Is there been a shift in attitude towards working? I'm asking some very deep questions that I don't have the answers to, but I think we can't address it. If we're going to address this 80,000, then we got to point out we got 80,000 people in this Tenney County region that aren't working. Why is that? What is going on?
Right, because when you gave those two numbers, I was trying to figure it up in my head, and I was like, well, that's a pretty big difference. But 80,000 people, just let that sink in. That is a huge number. And just like you said, we don't know, we do not know the circumstances, but regardless of circumstances, that's just a big number. And I think letting people know, here's where we are, that is a huge step toward figuring out, well, what can we do to get more people back in the workforce?
Yeah, Leslie, can we go forward a slide? Yeah, so I just want to point this out too. We said up front there are 125,000 total number of jobs in the region, filled and unfilled. When we look at what does that labor pool look like? Well, when we do the math, we say we got 120,290 actively seeking or actively working or seeking work. So you can automatically say just 125,000, 120,000. We've already got about a 5,000 person delta there, right? That's so if we did everything that we could, or not, I shouldn't say it like that. If that 120,290, if they were all actively working and nobody was seeking work, we'd be about 5,000 short in what we needed to supply, the workforce that we needed to supply. And so, when we look at what was advertised in February, the real number is probably closer to 7,000. I mean, that's what this data is telling us. I mean, so, um, anyway, that I had, we said that 7,000, it's rough math, but I mean, I think this helps articulate. I mean, it's not too far off. I mean,
Right.
not all these 120,000 are working. So, there's some of them here seeking work, that are out of work that are factoring into this. So, does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. So, and I think your point that even if the labor force, every single person in the labor force who is working or seeking work, if all of those people were actively working, we still are down 5,000 because of our labor force participation rate.
Yeah. That's the I guess, if you will, that's the bad news. The good news is, if you could go forward a slide, I hope, I'm not sure what I'm going to see. Okay, here we go. All right. But this is, this number is, it's a shocking number.
Yes.
It's a shocking number. But I mean, I'm trying to, what's this, to me, there's also a silver lining here. The silver lining is that we have the people. We have more than enough people to fill every job in this region and then some. What we've got to do is we've got to attack is the labor force participation rate. We've got to attack this 80,000, and we can recruit outside the region. Absolutely, that doesn't hurt at all. But we've got to attack this, and as much as I love workforce development and believe in this organization, this organization alone by itself, there's no amount of programming, there's no amount of resources, there's no amount of government dollars that would fix that 7,000 delta. It's not going to fix the attitude, the attitude towards work that drives labor force participation rate. And so, how do we attack this? Well, I don't have all the answers, but I do know this, is that if we want to attack it, it's not one single program. It's not one single organization. We, as a community, as a South Central Kentucky community, have to attack this in unison. I mean, we have to get back to talking about the value of work. And when I say we, I mean people in positions of authority, educators, faith leaders, politicians, local politicians, state politicians, national politicians, employers. I think, if we could all talk about the value of work and what comes, it's more than just money, right? Work offers there's self-esteem. There's obviously salary. There can be benefits. There's the ability to interact with other people and have, there's a social dynamic to this. There is so much goodness that comes with working that I think we've stopped talking about. And again, programs and resources will help, but so will just having everybody in the community kind of reiterate, what is the value of work? Why is work important? What is it going to do for you? And what are all the healthy benefits that come along with working? If we as a community, as a South Central Kentucky community, can talk about this and say, hey, look, like we've got to address this. We got to get back. We got to roll up our sleeves together to address this. If we can move the needle on this number just a little bit, I mean, 10% of this number is 8,000. 8,000, we'd have a surplus of 1,000 people.
Right.
Compared to what's being advertised, we'd have a surplus of 1,000 if we could knock this down by 10%.
Well, and I think this number is extremely enlightening because for years, and I'm sure you've heard it too, we've had people say, "Hey, we have more jobs than we have people to fill them," but that's not true. We have a lot. We have 80,000 people, and
We
again,
we have we have more jobs than people that want to work, right? But the people are there. We just have to convince people. We got to help convince people that there's goodness in getting back to work.
right, and just to go back to the reasons, there may be barriers that someone will have to address before they can get back in the workplace. If there is no one to care for children in the home, that would definitely be a barrier. But I really think what you said about looking at this as a region, looking at this sort of as a community rather than, the workforce board needs to take care of all that. It goes a lot deeper because there are lots of different reasons that may be behind this number, and we need to delve into that and figure out what's driving this number and how can we start chipping away at it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very good about the resources that we can bring to bear. We can help people with barriers to entry. That's what public workforce does. Is we can bring that to bear for job seekers. We can help employers. We have resources for employers. But that we can't apply those resources to people that aren't willing to. People have to come forward and say, I want to work, but I have a barrier. Now we can apply some resources.
Yes.
So we again, I'll say we all day long. We need everybody's help. How do we get those folks to raise their hand and come up and say, hey, look, I'm ready to get back into the workforce. And if they're ready, then we'll do everything in our power to, get them back into the workforce quickly and as efficiently as possible. If they need some upskilling and they qualify for our services, then we're going to do it. That's what public workforce assistance is for.
Absolutely. You ready for the next one?
Well, Leslie, you and I have talked about this. I mean, we have money to spend right now. The environment right now is very tough. I mean, the elephant in the room is the extension of unemployment benefits. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. There's a lot of folks out there that are doing better collecting unemployment right now than they would if they went back to work, and you can't blame them. That's understandable. But the challenge it's causing us is I have money to help these folks, but they're not really looking for help right now because they're doing just fine without any help, except for what they're getting through some unemployment benefits and some other benefits that may be coming their way. So it's challenging. It's a very challenging environment right now.
And I think people would be amazed at some of the things that we can help with. And the first thing that comes to mind is the web development training that we've been partnering with BC Skills Development Academy on. 15 weeks of training. For those who qualified, the class was either, the majority of it was paid for or it was completely paid for. And at the end of this 15-week training, these people will be ready to walk into a role as a junior web developer. And in the state of Kentucky, the average starting pay is around $60,000.
Yeah.
We are talking gigantic life changes. And, it's exciting. And I think, tackling this issue is really, I think, what we've been building toward that with this, data analysis and I feel like we're getting to the heart of it with this angle.
Agree. Yeah, they did. I said up front, this has been an evolution. So, but we're really proud of this open jobs report. I mean, for part of what workforce boards do is provide labor market information, and they should be providing this type of analysis and this type of honest conversation about what's going on. We can't, if we're not honest with ourselves about what the numbers look like, about what's happening, then we can't begin to fix them. So that's what we're trying to do with this report.
Absolutely. And, I think it is important to state up front, we're not making any judgments. We're not looking at putting people in boxes. Oh, this is why you're not working. This is why you're not working. We're saying we've got a big a big deficit. We've got a lot of people who are not in the workforce, and we know out of that 80,000, you could get a lot of people to fill jobs that are being advertised. So let's start tackling that.
Yep, that's exactly right. And I'll say, these numbers we provided today, look, we're not economists, we're not statisticians. If you really, the information is close, but not 100% precise. We've simplified this a great deal. As I've said in a lot of previous of reports that we've done, the more you get into these numbers, the messier they get. There's a lot of caveats. This whole I'm giving one right now. I mean, this whole report is there's dozens of caveats, but what we've tried to do is bake it down into something simple and do very simple math. 300,000 population, 200,000 working age, 60% participation rate. Here's what we're left with. So is 80,000 might be off by a little bit, but it's not off by a whole lot. I mean, we have 80,000 people not participating in the workforce. Maybe it's 78,000. I don't know, but it's still going to be a big number that we have to tackle. So anyway, let me get past that caveat. We've simplified it. We've boiled it down. We want to present it to you so that you can begin to understand what the challenges are, and then, be a partner with us on helping solve this labor force participation rate. We have a labor pool that could easily fill every role. We just have to kind of work on that conversation and how we get after it.
Exactly. So I think we've probably given 50 different reasons as to why this information is important. I think we have covered that and then some.
Ad nauseum.
All right. So that takes us to key takeaways.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered this pretty well too. Look, we have a booming economy. I mean, just when you have almost 7,000 advertised jobs, that's an indicator that your economy is very strong. And so, our economy here in South Central Kentucky remains very, very strong. But we also have 7,000 advertised jobs, which means we have a lot of people. We have a lot of employers that are hurting right now, that are begging for talent, begging for people. And again, we've got to address that. We're as a workforce board, as a public workforce agency, we're bringing resources to bear. We're bringing, we're doing everything we can to move that needle. But I mean, again, as we've kind of beat on this drum, labor force participation rate is what we've got to attack. I mean, that's the key takeaway. That's the new takeaway that we haven't introduced in this forum before, is we have got to tackle labor force participation rate. We've got to address it, figure out how to convince more people that, why it's important to get back into the workforce, and what are those what are all the benefits to doing so? The financial benefits, the health benefits, the social benefits, and the list goes on. So,
and I think today's webcast has been primarily, putting this out there. Here's our labor force participation rate. So to me, if the main thing someone remembers is, wow, we're only at 60% labor participation rate, that to me is huge, because that's something that's not in a lot of the dialogue that we're having right now. So that to me is the number one takeaway for sure.
yeah, I mean, yeah, Leslie, you and I have talked a lot about this offline. I mean, when as I'm new to this role, as I think about this role, as I go out and have public speaking events, this is what I'm going to talk about the most. I mean, I'm going to present the labor market information as I know it, and I'm going to ask every audience, like, how can we together get after labor force participation rate? That it's not going to be easy, but but it's something we have to do together. And again, as I said, it's not as if there's more jobs than people. We have the people. It's just we have more jobs than people that are willing to work. So can we influence the people that aren't working, those that are able-bodied and those that can we influence them and convince them that now is the right time to come back into the workforce?
And it could be, I mean, we have a large region, with 10 different counties. We may have a wide variety of strategies, for each county, just based on what's happening in each county. So the importance of having community help, we can't stress that enough.
No, that's exactly right. And I just think from a practical point of view too, like this is a great time to get back into the workforce. I mean, if employers are hurting that badly, now's when you want to come in, because I mean, you're going to move up. You're going to come in at an entry level or at a certain level, and it won't take long for you to move up, just because the demand is there. There's an opportunity to not only get into work but also to climb. When those vacancies are there, you're going to have opportunities to climb up the ladder and better yourself and better your position in a lot of different companies.
Right, and just like with different trainings as well. If someone has been thinking, oh, I'd really like to do this, or oh, I wish I could get something in this field, we can help with training. I mean, we can help to get you there.
Just like the government has extended unemployment benefits and then paid out provided money to families for the pandemic. Workforce boards and workforce agencies we've got money flowing right now. So this is a prime time. If you're willing to come in and get upskilled, we'd have to qualify you. But if we can qualify you, we can upskill you at little to no charge. And so it's actually a great time to get upskilled.
Absolutely.
We have money for it. Again, the caveat is we have to qualify you, and it depends on who you are and what your situation is. But if there's a way to qualify you, we will. Believe me, I want to upskill as many folks as we can.
Absolutely. And it's not just about changing a career. We're talking about changing a life, not just that one person's life, but the whole community. If I were able to get a training, go into a career that doubles my income, I mean, that's helping my whole family.
That's
so
right.
it's not just about changing one life, it's about changing all the lives that you connect with. So I like what you said, in that there is no better time than right now.
Yeah, I mean it's a great time. I mean that I probably should emphasize that more early on in this conversation, but it is a good time because you're going to have the opportunity to climb is there. The
Yes.
opportunity to climb is there. So
Well, if you have been watching and you want to find out more, as I mentioned, we've just shown a small portion of the data that is collected and analyzed every month. And in order to do that, you go to our website. We have a webinar tab, and you just click the Open Jobs Report Analysis and Review. And when you sign up for the webinar, even if you've watched this recording, just sign up for the webinar. You immediately get access to that whole slide deck. And it gives extremely thorough analysis of all the different job sectors. This information could really be eye-opening for employers, for sure.
all right, yeah, very
And
good, good.
if
Yeah,
you're
and
not, go ahead.
I was just going to say too, you know, and if you're out there watching and you have something specific that you need some specific labor market information, let us know. I mean, that's what we're here for. I mean, we help companies all the time, we'll run queries on wage analysis or some other very specific data set that they're looking for. And we're happy to do that for you. So just reach out. We'll support you every way we can with labor market information.
John, it has been very, I mean, even though I know some of this, it's always very interesting to talk about this data and talk about this information. And I feel like this is one of those moments where it's like an aha moment. I think that this is eye-opening information for people, and this having this looming number, I see that as the opportunity to be proactive. What can we do to reduce that by 10%? Then once we get there, what can we do to reduce it by a bigger number? But I see it as a big opportunity. Not for us as a board, but for individuals, for communities. So interesting and exciting stuff.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Leslie. Again, I've said it a couple times. I'm really proud of this report and what we're doing. This is what workforce boards are supposed to do. I don't know how many of them do this. I think a lot of them produce a report in terms of like here's a written report. But what this filming and this explanation and the context we try to provide around these numbers is something I think very few workforce boards do. I'm proud of it. That said, it's not perfect data. If anybody has any criticism or constructive criticism or recommendations, please send it our way because we always want to strengthen what we're doing.
Send those to John. Send those to John.
Send them to me. I've got thick skin.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. As mentioned, if you would like to download the complete slide deck, go to our website, southcentralworkforce.com, click the webinar tab, and sign up for the Open Jobs Report Analysis and Review for February 2021. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next month.